they're solving like a real problem that people have, which is that like you need to make sure that you've got the control when you're giving your field personnel the company credit card.
Welcome to another episode of HVAC Success Secrets Revealed with Daddy. Good conversation with good people. Any good conversation worth having is worth having drunk. Today we have on Evan's computer timed out. Daniel from ChIIRP, and a couple things we're going to talk about. You know, one of the things that I like in terms of the trailblazer and the fintech. I mean, some of the stuff and the experience that you've had in doing what you do is phenomenal. I can't wait to dive into some of that in terms of positioning yourself, doing a buy now, pay later series funding, having a big exit on top of that. So you know what you're doing in terms of the technological space, transforming that, moving into fleet management with some of the technology that you guys have. At first, actually, I think one of the first topics that we've had or guests to be able to talk to this on the show. So we're going to talk about optimizing fleet efficiency for HVAC operations, leveraging data, financial strategies. One thing too that I'm excited for is the horror stories that are going to come out of credit cards gone bad with employees. So looking forward to diving into some of that. But of course, our show would not be possible without our sponsors. In no particular order: CHIIRP, Elite Call, and On Purpose Media. And Evan's going to read them all.
So first we got CHIIRP. Transform your home service business with CHIIRP, the ultimate automation toolbox. Capture more leads, connect instantly, skyrocket your sales. CHIIRP integrates seamlessly with platforms like Service Titan and House Call Pro, offering automated text, emails, even ringless voicemails. Boost your Google reviews and customer loyalty with proven rehash programs. Schedule your demo today. Get an exclusive 25% off at your 3 months. Visit chirp.com/HSSR to start boosting revenue today.
Yeah, my bad. I was supposed to put that link up from the very beginning. So we're just ripping and rolling here on a high level. So have you ever thought about outbounding your databases to fill your dispatch boards with lucrative sales and service appointments, and boosting your memberships too while entering an Elite Call, a US-based call center that does just that? For over 20 years, their dedicated teams just don't make calls. They directly integrate into your CRM and fill your dispatch board. So don't let your competition get ahead. Give the folks over to Elite Call a call and get connected with your customers first. Visit elitecall.net to learn more today.
And last but not least, we've got On Purpose Media. Enhance your online presence with On Purpose Media, your go-to home service marketing expert for everything web design, SEO, PPC, stunning user-friendly websites. We got you covered. Increased visibility on search engines. Absolutely. Targeting traffic through effective pay-per-click advertising. Definitely. Let's turn your online presence into a lead-generating powerhouse. Visit onpurposemedia.ca to start your digital transformation and watch your home service company thrive.
All right. Welcome, Daniel, to HVAC Success Secrets Revealed.
Hey.
I promise we are generally more professional than this in terms of our show and what happens. But hey, you know what? This is the joys of going live, is sometimes it doesn't always go as you intended. But hey, we're here.
Well,
we're having a conversation.
whether I believe you or not, is to how professional you guys generally are. I will say that I'm very happy to be here. Thank you for having me.
Awesome. Well, thank you for having us on. So, perfect. Well, walk us through your journey. I know you've kind of got a pretty big background in the buy now, pay later, and then transitioning into fleet management services and truck cards. So, walk us through a bit of your journey and your story.
Yeah, for sure. And again, like I'm really happy to be talking to you guys. So thanks a bunch for this conversation. I'm really looking forward to it. I came to like the world of like HVAC and trades businesses like really through a pretty circuitous and kind of like side door way. I grew up as a software engineer, like primarily in financial services, like designing and building systems for like investment banks and hedge funds and asset managers. So like a lot of Wall Street stuff. It was a good career, but I was interested in other stuff like politics and policy, and figured I wasn't going to get there for my tech career. And I had this like a super spotty academic background. I was a high school dropout. I dropped out of a couple colleges, and I figured if I go to fancy law school, people will think I'm smart. And so I went to fancy law school, and it totally worked. And like now people think I'm smart. Like while I was there, I tried some of the stuff that I thought I was interested in, working in the government for a while and doing some stuff in hedge funds, and really wasn't like finding what I thought was sort of my place in the world. And around that time, like interesting people with interesting ideas started approaching me to start like fintech companies, financial technology companies. And so I started one my last semester of grad school called Bread, and I ran it for about like 5.5 or 6 years after that. Um, and I'll tell you about that company in a second, but like I'll say like it's like a bit of like a odd background. Like I've done a little bit of a bunch of different things. Like in some cases, more of a few of them. Like end up being like really well suited to running a business in financial technology. So both Bread, my prior company, and Coast, my current one, very much technology companies like at their core. And everyone in financial services always likes to say that about their business, but in payments, it's like really true. And I'm pretty good at like designing software systems. Finance is a language I speak well from both getting an MBA and more from the years working in the banks. It's a set of concerns that I just understand. And actually, the legal and regulatory training from law school comes to bear every day in like a really complex and regulated industry in payments. So I can sort of like be the best Daniel I can be running a fintech business. That prior company, Bread, was, as you said, like it's a consumer like buy now pay later company. So maybe you've heard of companies like Affirm or Klarna. Like you'll be shopping online for a couch and it's cost $1,000 and like you can pay for it in 24 installments over a couple of years of $47 or something. We were building a product that was like that, that we thought was different and better. And that was a venture capital backed business. We raised something like 100 million in equity capital from a bunch of investors, and we grew the company to like 150 people. And we ended up selling it to a bank that does store cards. Like when you go into a department store and they say, "Would you like to sign up for the company credit card?" For a lot of money, and it was a happy outcome after a number of years of hard work. Now, when I left that business, like I knew I was going to do something new in financial technology, but I didn't have like the thing that was like super exciting to me. So, like I ended up kicking around for a while, and eventually somebody said to me, "Hey, Daniel, you should take a look at fleet cards, fuel cards." And I was like, "What's that?" And I looked at it, and I was like, "Oh my god!" And I haven't been able to think about anything else like ever since. And so I ended up starting this business in 2020. I've been off to the races. You know, I was just like, I looked at a lot of stuff in the year after I left my last company, like a lot. Like nothing got me anywhere as excited as Coast. It's just like when you've got this like massive market in the fuel card space, it's like dominated by like a handful of folks like have been around forever, like that have like huge profit margins, that don't treat their customers particularly well all the time, but are solving like a real need for like a huge sector of the economy with a business model that works at just this like really big scale. But where the incumbents aren't always technology companies at their core, they're not really innovating all the time on like the value that they're bringing to their customers. I saw that pattern. I'm like, I've got to be able to build something like absolutely huge here. So yeah, so I've been living in like the trades and HVAC for the last few years. Like I completely don't belong here, but like it's been a really fun place to live as we've been building Coast.
Right, and this is actually an interesting topic that I love when people get into an industry that they sometimes don't feel like they belong, or they're new to it and they need to learn the ins and outs and the nuances. And so you're an outsider coming in a sense, in obviously the financial systems, the fintech, that market itself, but translating that into home services and specifically HVAC and plumbing is a little bit different of a nuance. What would you say was the biggest hurdle, biggest learning obstacle in transitioning from your previous to going into the home services?
Well, first I'll start by saying what was the continuity, because to me, one of the things that was so exciting about building expense management software and financial services and payments for the trades businesses was just how much they had not been served by that kind of modern technology up until now. Like when you look at it, like over the last 10 or even 15 years of what we think of as fintech, right? Like when you think about the neobanks like Chime or even sort of in the commercial space with like software like Mercury and Ramp and the like you've got like all of these companies that have really innovated on creating like really excellent digital experiences to like transform your experience of financial services, banking, payments, lending, credit, etc. um, and they've really been targeted at one, consumers, right, and two, certain kinds of companies, like for instance other venture capital backed startups and like large enterprise businesses. But like the trades businesses that make up like such this giant segment of the American economy, like have completely been left behind by this kind of innovation. Right. And so for me, like a large part of the excitement about building Coast, a large part of sort of what I think is the opportunity of innovation is to take a lot of that same kind of experience that's been developed for like a digital workflow on desktop and mobile web, on native apps, et cetera, from the consumer experience, and to bring it to this massive part of the economy that really has not been touched by fintech, sort of in a really big way. And so like, even though it is different, even though it is like a segment that like is not like where I come from informs a lot of what I'm doing, and I'm just excited about sort of the size of the opportunity. Look, the challenges in some ways have been like there's like a variance, I would say, in terms of the degree to which HVAC business owner or their fleet manager or their financial operations or AP person is like open to thinking about different kinds of digital experiences in their workflows, right? Like a lot of these people like have like, there's like Judy in the back office, and like she has like a spreadsheet of like, like all the trucks and like who's supposed to be driving the truck, and there's like a little thing with like the number of the card, like that's in every truck, and when somebody leaves, then like you cross it out with a pencil and like you put somebody else in, like that kind of thing, like is like so integral into like how these people operate their businesses a lot of the time. And like talking to Judy and being like, actually, you could be doing a whole lot more with your time to grow your business, to actually be more profitable, to spend more time on booking more sales and on getting your guys into more jobs instead of the sort of workflow around reconciliation and auditing and all that stuff that could be enabled by technology, right? So that has been a bit of a challenge, but it's been something that's been really exciting for us. And generally speaking, when we show people what's possible, they get excited too.
The one thing there's a couple of things here. I mean, behind innovations, and then you touched on it again, is digital innovations and workflows, and being behind the eight ball in a lot of things that people are doing. And when we think about yellow pad technology and people are using that, like you alluded to, in what ways can, regardless of what platform that they're using, and now obviously CoastPay is your preference, what ways can people move potentially from that archaic world into more of a digital innovation to enhance their workflows?
Yeah. So, I mean, like, look, you already mentioned a couple of companies that people are using today as a software platform to enhance their business. You mentioned how your sponsor, CHIIRP, integrates with House Call Pro and integrates with Service Titan, right? I mean, like, people are adopting these field services management software suites to be able to sort of enhance their productivity in the trades businesses, including HVAC. But there's other tools that sort of surround that operating system that really, really matter to make these businesses more effective. And at the end of the day, to grow faster, to like actually generate more profit. And this is like why we're in this business. It's like to help these companies actually like build better and bigger businesses. A couple that come to mind that like are really relevant, and I'll come to talking about Coast in a second. But like, first of all, all of these businesses operate vehicle fleets. Like it's sometimes possible to lose sight of that. But like, if you run an HVAC company, you got vans, you've got trucks, like you've got people who are in them, and like, you need the control and security and visibility and reporting that goes into understanding the total cost of ownership and the efficiency of what is one of the most important assets in your business, which is that vehicle fleet, right? And that means that you need a couple of different kinds of tools. One is telematics, right? There's a lot of companies that provide you with the kind of aftermarket tools, the device that plugs into the data port of the onboard computer of your vehicle and pulls out information like precise GPS reporting, speed, braking, like fuel, odometer, gauge readings, all sorts of other stuff that allow you to do things like figure out which ones of your drivers are driving safely, which ones are, actually creating potential liability risk for you because they're speeding or they're hard braking or they're doing other stuff that would be indicative of them doing unsafe stuff. Or maybe like you have like smart dash cams that can use AI to tell you if like your guy is actually texting like while he's driving, again, potentially exposing you to liability. You can figure out if your team is actually getting to the jobs that they're supposed to be at, or they're just, sitting around the parking lot of McDonald's, like chatting with a girlfriend or like whatever it is that they should not be doing instead of like helping to serve your business. There's a lot of great companies that do this, Samsara, Azuga, there's a whole bunch of folks. But like, it's kind of
Going
an
for
essential
interviews at other
tool
companies
for a modern fleet operating business.
Yeah.
There
Yeah,
you
it was
go.
like the interview. I
If
just
you
I just
guys
remember a
want,
previous position I was at. I'm not allowed to name the industry anymore on our podcast, but I remember they had this, and the boss actually had me help install a second monitor on his computer so he could have those little guys up on the screen. He could see the vehicles drive around the city because they had a fleet of cars, right, and a fleet of vans, and so it was kind of neat to see. But I remember one time there's one guy, he was like, "You were going to 160 in a 50 zone." He's like, "What?" He's like, "No, I wasn't." It's like, "You're going 160 and 50 zone." He's like, "No, it was icy and I floored it to see how fast the odometer would go." Like,
listen, you were talking about horror stories. People get really creative when they're out on the road. I mean, like, look, and then the other category is the fleet card, right? Which is where Coast lives, right? So, like, look, if you are giving the technician who works for you the company credit card when they take the van out to do their job, like, you need that security. Like, you want to make sure that they're buying the right grade of gas when they're at the gas station. You want to make sure that they're not going into the convenience store of the gas station to buy cigarettes and soda, right? Like, you want to make sure that they're like using the company card to not fill up their personal car, but to fill up the company car, right? Like, so uh, there's a couple companies in the U.S. that do this. They're really big. They're really profitable. Like I said earlier, they don't always treat their customers great, and they're built sometimes on pretty old technology. But like they're solving like a real problem that people have, which is that like you need to make sure that you've got the control when you're giving your field personnel the company credit card. And so for Coast, like a lot of what we've tried to do is to say to folks that like there were tools in the incumbent space that actually help you to control this kind of spend that's happening on behalf of your business. But they're built on these kind of antiquated methods. Like in the old school way of doing things, like if you give your guy a fleet card from one of the incumbent offerings, they'll dip it into the the card reader on the automated fuel dispenser, like the gas pump that people use at the front of the convenience store, and it'll prompt them like with that little dial pad that's on the gas pump for like a whole bunch of stuff, like your driver ID, your vehicle's VIN, like your personal PIN, like the odometer reading on your truck. Now, first of all, the drivers of the vehicles, your technicians, they absolutely hate that, right? Like they're gonna have
Absolutely.
the vehicle
yep.
in the freezing cold. No, they've forgotten the odometer reading. They hit 9999999, right? Like now your data is bad, right? Because like it's just like it's not reliable. Drivers share pins, so the security is bad. The vehicle card, which is associated with the vehicle, gets into like a different vehicle, and now like all of a sudden your data is all screwed up and you don't understand the total cost of ownership of your fleet. You can't make decisions that like matter to your business. So for us, like we've kind of done away with all of that. Like we've sort of created like a new system, which is based on the reality that unlike the situation when the sort of incumbent products were invented, like today everyone's got one of these. Everyone's got a mobile phone in their hands, and so we built the system entirely built on top of SMS. So like we send people these plastic cards. They can give them to the drivers and to keep in their wallets if they want. They can leave them in the glove boxes or the visors of the vehicles. It doesn't matter. It works the same way. You get into the vehicle at the beginning of your routes. You pull a card out of the glove box. You text the card ID like ABC123 or whatever it is to Coast. We say, "Oh hey, is somebody like who like your boss put you in the system with that phone number? Yes. Okay. Are you still driving sort of Mercedes Sprinter van, license plate XYZ? Yes. Okay. Now we can sort of mediate all the transactions that you try on that card with the policies that your manager has set that apply to you, that apply to that vehicle, the combination thereof. We can look at the line item detail of what it is that you purchased, like what grade of gas, how many gallons, what was the price per gallon, et cetera. Report that back. If you try to do things like, for instance, make a purchase when the real-time GPS of your vehicle that you're supposed to be assigned to is far away from the merchant, the gas station where you're trying to make a purchase, we can decline that. We can flag that. Why are you trying to make a purchase that's more gallons than what your fuel gauge says is empty in the gas tank at the time that you're making the purchase? Decline that, flag that, restrict that. Like all that sort of stuff that's like really designed to give you precise control. And the reason like this is important, in addition to sort of allowing you as the manager to focus more on running your business, is also because like you have like these employees and like the large majority of them are like trustworthy, loyal personnel. They're there to like do a good job and to help you to build your business, to get paid for it, and you can count on them. But there's always going to be some that aren't like that. There are always going to be some that are going to try to take advantage, right? And like you live in an environment now where like there isn't trust even with you and like the good employees that you have, because you're always like sort of second guessing them, and you're always asking like are you actually doing what's right for the company, or are you trying to take me for a ride, right? Giving you the technology tools to monitor that, to like sort of see that really easily, and to understand that like people are doing what they're supposed to be doing, can actually amplify the trust that's in your company, so that like it's just like a better place for people to work, because like the good guys are doing the right thing, and when the bad guys are doing the wrong thing, like you'll know that pretty quick too.
I love that concept. I remember back to that other one. I had a fleet card. I had a credit card, right? And it was only good for one gas station. And I had to enter in the odometer number, and I would just make shit up all the time. And probably drove them nuts. But
Yeah,
right,
exactly.
and like I remember the boss saying to me, "Is like, okay, you can fill up in any pitcher Canada, basically Red Deer South in Alberta." He's like, Red Deer South, yeah, maybe the odd one outside of your area. Just keep an eye on it so you don't get flagged in the system. I'm like, okay, so now you have a medium of trust that you are empowering to your people, where you set that GPS radius. Man, that's just, especially if people take their vehicles home. Right now, some people, I mean, there's an argument there too. Do you let them take their vehicle home, park it on the road, or do you let them? Do you have to put it in the shop every time? Right now, different argument, different thing. But I love the ability to be able to do that.
Yeah, and by the way, just a couple of things on that. Like one, like we see our customers doing it all over the map. Like some of them have all the vehicles in the depot or the lot at the end of the day. Some of them, the employees take the vehicle home. The product works really, really well in both cases, because you can allow people, for instance, to only use the card during their work shifts, right? So you can set up like different like sort of timing, so that like if you try to use it like on a Saturday morning, it's just not going to work, right? And then it's fine, right? Like so but like if you try and use it during your working hours, it'll work okay. We also with that GPS are able to make sure that people are doing things that like make sense with regards to their vehicle, because the stuff that you see, and like you talked about horror stories earlier, like people do wacky stuff, like in short, what I like to tell folks. And by the way, I apologize for a second. Can you hear me? I just heard my like, headphones dying. Are you able to hear me okay? Okay, sorry to interrupt the flow of the podcast. The like people do wacky stuff, right? Like you will sort of see people filling up the gas tank of the commercial vehicle with the commercial credit card, and then the wife is behind in the family car, and they'll fill it up in the same transaction if they had like a limited number of authorizations in order to try to like, get around those restrictions. Or like a variation of the same thing is you see people like putting like a bladder like on the gas tank of the vehicle, and then overfilling the gas tank so they have the excess, and they'll sell it to somebody else, or otherwise use it, or they'll just simply like put in the commercial credit card into the gas pump, and they'll sell the gas at like some discount to the guy behind them in line, pocket it themselves, and obviously the company gets billed for it. And it's wild. And the thing about it that's like so funny to me is like there's so much energy and creativity that goes into that. You wish that people would put that
Right.
towards like doing their jobs well, instead of just like trying to scam the boss. It's like these are creative, talented people, clearly, if they're coming up with this stuff.
Right.
But like this is where they put their energies.
Yeah. It's funny when people like criminals. I mean, and I guess in this case they're stealing from you, legitimately stealing from you. They would be labeled as a criminal. The creativity that they come up with, like, it just blows my mind. They're like, guys, just be good. And guess what? I mean, now here's another alternative. Going back to the old trust system, if you have a good company culture with a buy-in, you think that would reduce and eliminate some of these issues? Or is it mainly
Yeah,
in
I
organizations
honestly
that
think
have shitty cultures?
sure. At the end of the day, like if you're running a business, and I've run a couple, like over the course of the last like dozen years, like the fundamental bedrock of all of your operating activities is the culture that you're building, right? At the end of the day, like, and that translates into who it is that you're hiring, what sorts of behaviors you're looking for, encouraging, rewarding, uh, punishing, like, among your sort of personnel. What are the values that you are emphasizing actually matter to you, and like your employees will like hear that, like you repeat it, you emphasize it, you make it part of your identity as a business. That is the foundation. Like without that, like you can have like as many software tools as you want, like you're not going to build sort of like a sustainable workforce that's going to drive value for you and your company like over a long period of time if you don't invest in that foundation. But like once you've built that foundation, like you have to be building on top of it. And that's where the software comes in. And that's where the tooling comes in. Because again, like if you build that foundation, the large majority of your team is going to be with you, is going to be looking to build value for you, is going to be looking to help your customers, right? So that you can continue to serve them over like a really long period. But like there's always going to be like, you never get it 100% right. And like the problem with not getting it 100% right is like you can have like 3 or 4% of the people that you hire or the people that you bring on board like not be right for the team. But the amount of time that you spend like having to create a whole apparatus to monitor to avoid the damage that that 3 or 4% can do can just like suck away like all of the energy that you would rather be spending building your business, like being more profitable, right? Like that's where the software tools come into play. But you're absolutely right. Like if you don't have that foundation of a culture to begin with, then like none of the rest of this stuff actually.
Yeah, and look, here's the other part too. And I mean, in the call that we had prior to you coming on, you mentioned roughly it was like a 9 to 12% savings on average by coming in with a better fleet management system. If you're saving 9 to 12% of your fuel costs, depending on how much you have, you can actually then either put that onto your bottom line, or if you want to enhance your culture, give that back to your people, folks.
Yeah, I mean, like this exactly like why would you choose to spend inefficiently like that? The efficiencies that you gain allow you to invest in your team, allow you to like to your point, like actually like make a larger profit, or allow you to invest on growing your business. You know, and by the way, where those like 9 to 10% or more savings come from, it comes from a few places with Coast. Um, One is that we have a great partner network. This is not the most important thing, but it's worth mentioning. Like, at least in the United States, I know that you guys are Canada based, but like, at least in the United States, like Coast customers, will get not only 2 cents per gallon anywhere they buy as a rebate back from Coast, but like if you go to one of our partner stations, like if you go to any Exxon Mobil, they have more than 10,000 locations, you'll get another couple of cents off per gallon. If you go to any 7-Eleven or Speedway, you'll get an additional 5 cents off per gallon for a total of 7 cents off. If you go to any Casey's or Racetrack, you'll get up to 6%, 6 cents off per gallon. So that's the savings. But the other part of it is two things. One is you mentioned before that you used to have a fleet card where you would go to one particular station, right? Coast is built on top of the Visa network. It works everywhere Visa is accepted, which basically means it works everywhere, right? So that means that like you can go to wherever gas is cheapest as a driver, or more importantly, you can go to wherever is most efficient for your routes for the day, so you can focus on getting more work done and not having to find the gas station that accepts your particular product.
Oh, that's
The
huge.
last thing I'll
That's a
say,
huge thing, because I remember that, like, going back to that one gas station, and if it wasn't anywhere close, I mean, for me it was easy. It was 3 blocks away from my house, so every time I came home and I knew it to fill up, I just filled up right then and there. Not everybody out and about is that lucky, and so it's a huge thing. Huge thing.
it's really important. And by the way, like, look, even when it's right next to your house, like sometimes like you've got a day where you've got to be all over the place, right? And like you just have to fill up someplace, and you don't want to be like stuck there or having to or pay out of your own pocket and do the reimbursement, or but you want to have the tools to do it. Coast's partnership with Visa, and Visa have been incredible partners to Coast, by the way, I should say. Like they've been really sort of active in helping us develop this technology. That means a lot for our customers. But the last thing that I'll say is just around the controls that I was talking before, the visibility, the security. Like what's funny is like, so when a customer applies to use Coast, like they go onto our website, they put in some information about their business. One of the things that we ask them is how much do you typically spend on fuel in a given month? And they put in a number. And then they'll get onboarded with Coast. And I'll see that they're not spending as much as they said that they put on the form. And I'll be like, what's going on? And so I'll yell at my head of sales, and my head of sales will yell at the account executive who booked the deal. And that person will go and call the customer, and they'll be like, why haven't you onboarded your fleet? Like, why are you spending less than you said that you spent? And they're like, no, we onboarded the whole fleet. It just turned out that we were getting totally fleeced by our employees before we started using Coast. So like the savings come from like a whole number of different places. The rebates, the universal acceptance, and the convenience around that, like both in terms of time and mileage, as well as the price of gas, and from the security and visibility to prevent the abuse and inefficiency. Which, to your point, like those are savings that you can spend towards growth, towards your people, or towards your profit.
100%.
Well, and even just the brain power of it, to forget that part, to just not have to think about it anymore, to be able to let go of it, know that this is getting taken care of. Know that your funds are not being taken from you in an inappropriate way, or no one's abusing it. To just free up that brain power, to be able to think about the things that are actually important to you and how to grow your business and where to move your business forward. And now I can establish this relationship or grow this relationship or put time into my employees and train them. And yeah, it's incredibly impactful.
So to your point, like, we have customers who before they started using Coast, like they would like on a nightly or at least a weekly basis go into the lot and write down the odometer readings of all the vehicles and do the math on miles per gallon and be like, is this making sense? Or is this something that's like going wrong? And like if you start an HVAC
That's something I
business,
could see you doing, by
right,
the
and
way.
you're trying to serve your customers, you're trying to
I
build
actually
some.
used to do that. I used to every fill up. I wanted to know what my mileage was. I was gonna say liters per 100 kilometers, but I was like, no, wait a second. Most people watching, yes, I actually used to write that down. I was curious. I stopped on the truck. I'm like, okay, I know that the computer is 1 liter per 100 kilometers off.
It's not what these people signed up to do this business for, right? Like no one wants to do that. That's like not fun. Like so like it's to your point. Like if we can prevent people from having the need to do that kind of work by, to your point, like freeing up their minds to like think about their business, then like I think we're creating value for our customers and frankly, hopefully helping them have not as bad of a time.
But you're also creating efficiencies too, right? You're saving time by freeing that up. You don't have somebody going in and getting the odometer and punching it into an Excel sheet to be able to compute what your mileage is on a vehicle and yada, yada, yada. It's just there. Now that saves time. They pull up a report. Oh, lo and behold, it's there. Now they're saving a bunch of time. Perfect segue into the random question generator. Evan, take her away.
All right. So, Daniel, we got 3 random questions here for you. They have nothing to do with anything that we've been talking about. You don't get to know what they are before you hear them. So you get to choose what's behind door number 1, 2, or 3.
I always pick door number 3.
Why is that?
Well, I just figured door number 1 and 2 are just kind of like Patsy setups. Like the real prize is behind door number 3.
All right. What's your ideal Saturday look like?
Oh
wow. Okay, this is going to be like super boring. I'll tell you what my actual Saturdays look like right now. Which is my actual Saturdays are I wake up, I open up my laptop, I answer emails for about 8 or 9 hours, and then probably go out and like have some bourbon with my friends, and then I go to sleep. So I'm not the most interesting guy these days, but my ideal Saturday. I live in Brooklyn, New York. This is where I am right now. Like I'm at my house in Brooklyn, New York, and I love Brooklyn. It's actually like a really amazing place to live. I'm lucky that like a whole lot of my friends live within walking distance from my house. It's like a real great community. And like honestly, like an ideal Saturday for me is to walk around my neighborhood in Brooklyn, go to Prospect Park, which is like kind of like the central park of Brooklyn, and it's beautiful like rolling hills and fields and like whatever. And just sit out with friends and drink a bottle of wine in the park and sort of let the day fade away. So
Now we lost the mic
now
completely.
we lost the mic. Yeah, he got the notification. So it sounds like I mean that ideal Saturday, and I'll buy him some time as he switches his settings over. Is actually really, I mean, to me, not the email part, the other one where taking the time off. I mean, me personally, I don't work on a Saturday. I take Saturdays off. We lost his audio or his video too. So his device is not connected. I'm sure you'll get that back. But actually, my ideal Saturday is not working at all. I don't work on Saturday. I come back on Sunday some nights, and I'll do it on Sunday. But that idea of just going out and hanging out and being in the moment is a powerful, powerful piece, in my opinion. What's your ideal Saturday look like?
Well, throughout the summer, it's baseball. My kids play baseball, so my boys are at the diamond all day long. So that's where we are, and that's all we do.
Cooler full of beer in the back.
That's what we did a couple weekends ago.
Right?
We were in Kamloops, so that was fun.
There you go. But that's mine. I hang with my kids, right? That's my day to spend without a lot of technology on there. So, you know what, Evan? Oh, we deleted the other questions. That's right, because Stacy likes to keep those for future episodes. So it's too bad that we lost Daniel. I think we're coming on a pretty good turn into efficiency. It's kind of where I want to get into. And so in looking at what their product is talking about, what their product can do, how can you see efficiencies in a business by utilizing it?
Well, I mean, number one, from an employee perspective, how can we keep them happy, right? When they're not having to enter in the odometer, when they're not having to punch in all these different pins and deal with all the bullshit, it frees up their headspace. So now they feel better about what they're doing. So that's number one. Number two, it's speeding up the efficiencies on the business side. We don't have to be focusing and worrying about, are people overspending? Are people taking advantage of us? And then all of a sudden you get this cynical mindset around your team. That's poison in and of itself. To free that up and to remove that makes it worth it. Like, even if it didn't save you any money on the front end of just people not abusing the cards, even if it didn't do that, the fact that it removes that cynical mindset from it is fantastic. And again, getting back to the freedom to just be present, to think about your employees, to think about your people. How can we grow them? How can we invest in them? Look for new opportunities. Like, that freedom to think is so impactful. People think that we need more time or more money or more energy or more knowledge or more information in order to achieve. And really what we need is more invested time and focused time on what it is that's going to actually move the needle forward. We don't take time to pause and reflect and think about the things that are the most important. And by freeing up this time, by buying back this time, by using a service like this, it does that for you.
Well, it becomes mindless, right? In a sense. And so, but the other part of that freeing up that time is going back to the ideal Saturday, now that Dan's back on, is that ability to just be away and disconnect from a lot of things. I think a lot of people miss the mark on that in taking the time to disconnect from something. And maybe that's what your ideal Sunday looks like, Daniel. Or maybe you're just one of the folks. Some people, they don't need it. They just want to work, right? Those are few and far between, but there are those people that are like that. But taking that time to disconnect from your work to be able to think about the bigger things as well is not quite on the topic of but it does make sense. So one of the things, Danielle, as you're coming back in, we started talking about efficiencies and freeing up those efficiencies. And Evan was talking about, and you kind of came in the tail end there, of freeing up time in order to be able to think, right, is in terms of one of the efficiencies within this. But I did want to transition and go into the efficiency side of things, because I think we just scratched the surface a little bit beforehand. So in terms of efficiencies created by leveraging technology inside of a business, specifically for fleet management charge cards, what sort of data are you seeing in terms of efficiencies created?
Yeah, and apologies for the technical difficulties there. My headphones died, and then like, for some reason that exploded my entire computer. I wasn't expecting the result, but that's what happened.
Because of Apple's products, it kind of blows up everything.
Must be an Apple product.
Yeah, exactly. So listen, like in terms of the data, like I'll say this, like you mentioned a sort of our data around customers saving 9 to 10% on their monthly fuel bill. That same study that we did, like showed that customers are saving 16 hours on average in terms of time when they switch to Coast from another payment method for their fuel bill. And by the way, like I should mention for a second here,
Per
like
month,
it's not just fuel, like, part of the efficiency. Sorry, can you guys hear me?
Per month or per tech? The 16 hours, is that per month?
Across the board.
Okay.
Across the board. So if like you're spending like X dollars per month on fuel, generally speaking, for your business, like when switching to Coast from a different kind of payment method for fuel, you end up spending 0.9x essentially. Like, you know, it's just 10% less, which is quite significant. Obviously, it's like a major contributor to the expenses of a business that operates a vehicle fleet.
In terms of the hours, though, is that 16 hours? Is that per person, or is that?
No, it's 16 hours in total. So in terms of like the amount of effort that like people are spending, if we actually saved like, you know, like half a week from everybody in your business, like I think that like the company would already be worth a few $1 billion. But like, we're working on it. We're going to get there. It's pretty soon. But no, like what I would say is that like the efficiencies come from like a lot of areas, including sort of the reconciliation that we spoke about.
It also comes from the fact that Coast does more than a traditional fuel card does, because it's not just about fuel. Like, you look at the traditional incumbents in the industry, and they've historically made what we know of as so-called closed loop solutions, which means that they're not running on the Visa and MasterCard rails, as we were talking about a moment ago, but they're special networks that are explicitly integrated by the gas stations that accept these kind of commercial fuel cards. And they don't work for other stuff, right? But when you have like your people in the field, they have to spend money on other things besides fuel, right? Parking tickets, tolls, car washes, parts, maintenance, picking up extra supplies at Home Depot when you didn't pick them up at the warehouse before, right? So generally speaking, our customers who are coming from a incumbent solution, from like one of the existing folks, for all that other stuff, they need to have like a second method, like either like a general purpose corporate card, which is like an invitation for abuse and fraud in this category, as we were talking about before, or like some kind of cumbersome system of receipts and reimbursements, which adds to like all that inefficiency in terms of like all the time that you need to manage that kind of program. Like, having a single solution, but with really precise control and visibility that can say, hey, you can buy like this much on gas in a given week, but you can only spend like $50 in hardware and supplies every couple of times a month. And if you need to go above, you can send a text, and the Coast system will allow the boss to give you like an automatic approval for a one-off exception, like all that stuff. That's like way, way, way easier, and like requires just like a lot less overhead and oversight. We can also do things like push the expenses in a pre-categorized way into your accounting ledger, right? So like in terms of like your AP people or your controller or your financial operations personnel, that's less time that they need to spend on sort of like the reconciliation and closing the books at the end of the month. In terms of like all the workflows we facilitate and figuring out if something was an exceptional purchase and didn't meet your regular policies, how you get the receipts, the memos, like all of that's built into our system with a native app that we're releasing this quarter, with the SMS workflow that we've had from the very beginning to capture all that information and attach it to transactions. Like, it just adds like a ton more technology enabled efficiency and allows your like back office personnel, not just your field personnel, but like the people that like are actually helping you to run the business back at the office, to focus again on like, how do we get more leads? How do we get more customers? How do we serve them better? How do we do more business with the customers that we have? Because again, that's what you're in the business to do.
Mm-hmm. I love all of those things. I want to get into, just as we're going to be respectful here of your time, one last topic, and then we'll wrap things up. Horror stories. I think I want to hear more. Mainly just because I love the idea of being able to expose some of this, in not so much just to paint the light on the people that are doing it, but in case people are doing it to the listeners and they don't even know it. That's something that I want to highlight a little bit more. So hit us with a couple of your top 3 horror stories. Let's go with that.
Yeah, I think I already touched on some of them. I mean, like the classics are like okay, like, you know, I'm not going to allow people to make more than X number of purchases with the company card. Like, this is again with like old school incumbent solutions. I was just like, okay, like you can limit it to like one fuel purchase a day or whatever. And so like the wife is behind in the family car, and so like before you like put the gas pump back into like the device, like it's just like you hold it out, like you filled up the company car, and like, you know, your family member pulls up in the family car and you just fill it up in the same thing, like which to me is absolutely wild. There's a saying in our industry, not a saying, but a phrase that people use in our industry, which is like Cokes and smokes, like, which is like, it's like people use like the company card to buy Cokes and smokes in the convenience store, like that is like, and it's like, it seems like so small, it seems like so piddling, it seems so marginal, right? Like it's not like the thing that's actually like supposed to move the needle for your business, but it really like adds up. And like you can
especially
like
when
just
you're at a
like,
company like I was at 2 weeks ago, any hour, they got 340 trucks on the road.
Mm-hmm.
yeah, exactly, right? So like 340 trucks, like 340 trucks, $500 of fuel per truck, right? Then like per month, right? Like, and then you think about like, okay, if they put an extra like $50 per truck per person, right? Like, what does that actually end up adding up to? It's like, okay, this is actually like significant. Like, if you're the owner of the business, that's like money that you're not taking home, right? So
Right.
there's
Well,
that
like I did quick math on it. So let's just say 10% of those trucks add in $50 per week on whatever shit. times 52 weeks, that's $88,400 on a business that size, right? Just like as a random example, right?
Yeah, you could like hire somebody. Like that's
Yeah.
that's back on planet Earth. That's like a lot of money. Like I mean, like it's pretty meaningful. So like yeah, that stuff, and then like some of the stuff that we see is like really wild. Like somebody will like try to take the company card, and like they themselves will have like set up some kind of business where they've gotten approved to accept credit card payments and use the company card to like pay themselves like tens of thousands of dollars like in the transaction. And sometimes like the credit card company like will figure that out and they'll stop it in advance, and sometimes they won't. And it's just like there's like not much that you can do, because like they'll take that money and they'll like just like drain it into their bank account and run away with it. And that's the end of the day. Like the identity theft stuff is insane. Like, you know, there's a lot of like really bad stuff that happens with regards to, your business partner or your trusted senior employee using your personal information to open up some kind of account or to use your existing account to essentially run up a whole lot of charges and then basically become scarce. And then you are left like holding the bag. Like, there's a whole lot of stuff that like you see go on. And again, like I want to reemphasize, like most of the people that you work with are going to be good people. Like if you're doing your job, and like what we were talking about earlier with regards to culture, if you're creating the kind of values and the environment that attracts good people, like you're generally going to be okay. But there's always going to be the people that aren't, and like that's why you need to create the systems, and that's why you need to have the tools to prevent it. Because just like you said, like even on that math with just like the little bit per truck per month per year, like it starts to add up, and like that's the difference to your bottom line.
Right. And it's like, and it's trusted people too. Like I know somebody who, uh, family business, and one family member used, forged the signature of another family member to create a holding company to be able to put taxes in, which then ended up screwing over the person who got forged because, well, they found out now he had this big tax bill because somebody decided to forge that signature. Right now, obviously, and like we're talking flea management, but like that's a completely different game, and that's family that does that. It's
One
wild.
of one of the really funny things is that like these products in the fleet card industry, fuel cards, fleet cards, they're typically people start to look for them when they've got 6 trucks, 10 trucks, like something along around that size. And by the time you're bigger than that, like everybody has some kind of solution in the space. We think we're the best one, and we're winning business away from the incumbents. But people like find out about this category. Like when it's just like you and your brother-in-law and you're running like a startup HVAC business, people don't usually look for these solutions. What's funny is that like people find these solutions when they've had their first incidences of abuse that they've actually detected. Like somebody like stole from them using the company card, and they're just like, oh shit, like I'm gonna need something here. And they like somebody tells them about fuel cards, and they Google it, and hopefully they find us, and like we sell them the product, and then they have a good system in place. The funny thing is, like a lot of the time, like it's the brother-in-law. Like that's the person that was like doing the abuse to begin with. Like you think that like when it's just like the two of you, like there's no reason for mistrust because like you're so close and you can just text each other like where are you and like where are you buying gas or like whatever. But like sometimes it's the people who are closest to you who are actually taking the most advantage of you.
Mm-hmm.
Well, that's just it. Like people more often than not are not they're not in enough discomfort to be able to do anything about it. They're not motivated enough by the upside of it to actually do anything about it. They're just stuck in the middle ground, and that's where most people sit because they haven't realized it, right? And we talked about it before, ignorance isn't bliss, ignorance is pain, right? When you don't know what you don't know, it's a painful thing, and people end up taking advantage of you, and it's really shitty. And by the way, if people can't find you online, you should probably call us and we'll help you with your SEO.
Thank you very much. I appreciate it.
Yeah. Cool. So if we have a final question before that, of course, if people want to get in touch with you, you can reach at coastpay.com is their account. They also have a Twitter. I know it's the Twitter handle is like, can you do an @ in Coast Payments, or do you have to go to twitter.com, or is it x.com? I don't really know. I'm confused. LinkedIn.com/company/Coast. And of course, if you want to reach out via email, Shohini, not you, this is Shohini. You're delegating with the finest of abilities by putting Shohini's email on the podcast.
You got it.
To reach out to him. So I like that. Actually, Tom had a post or whatever. Maybe I got hooked into one of his ads. I don't really know about 8 things that he does to delegate. in delegation is like that's in its finest form right there. So as we do wrap up, though, then we have one final question here for you, and that is, what is one question that you wished people would ask you more but don't?
Oh, wow. That's a very sort of like abstract, like kind of like meta
And it
question.
can be anything. It does not have to be business. It could be personal, it could be life, it could be business.
Well, yeah, we already got a chance to talk about walking in Prospect Park on a Saturday, so I don't know if we need to go too far away from business, but like,
That's what you do
um,
after Prospect Park on Saturdays that matters.
yeah, exactly. And that's where again, like you guys told me to stock up on the bourbon for this podcast. So yeah, I think I'm good for a Saturday night. No, I would say something that people talk about sort of the tactics of what it is that we're doing, the market that we're going after, the HVAC business, the trades business more broadly. Um, but like I am also sort of involved sometimes as an investor, sometimes as an advisor to other companies in payments, in fintech more broadly. And I think that people don't ask about enough and don't appreciate enough sort of how big an opportunity there is in designing financial services products for really specific use cases. Like, people like again, I was mentioning earlier, like, you think about like you can get like Chime as your consumer bank app, right? Like, and like there's like all sorts of stuff for consumers, and there's like stuff for startups. Um, but like when you're thinking about sort of building payments products for HVAC, right? You have to think about like you got different guys. They're like switching vehicles. They're sharing cards. You need that visibility, etc. And you have to take a lot of these sort of financial services experiences and really sort of reimagine them as workflows that actually make a difference in the particular kinds of experiences that particular kinds of businesses have. And to me, that's an incredibly exciting opportunity. HVAC is a huge market, right? And we're sort of like just laser focused on trying to like sell to that market to try to understand what is it that matters to the owners of these businesses. How can we build financial services that work for them? That's not just like your Chase app or like whatever that allows you to like send a wire or allows you to sort of like mail a check, or it's about like something that like, what does it mean like when you have these kinds of employees in the field? How do you build experiences around that with financial services? That theme overall is going to matter in healthcare. It's going to matter in hospitality. It's going to matter in restaurants. It's going to matter in like every other one of these areas. That to me is like something that I'm just like really excited about. I think that like as a technology industry, we're just like really early in figuring all of that out, and that's something that's like really exciting to me. Probably not the answer that you were asking for, but like I figured that's the one I'll give.
But it is good. It's what are the like you can spin that off as what are the industries you're targeting? Why track? Why this and et cetera. And so in a roundabout way, it did come back full circle, I believe, in my opinion. So, but hey,
Well, and it's a great lesson too for even the listeners of the podcast, so that you get narrow and deep first as opposed to going wide.
Yes,
I think far too many start to add on additional services because I think that's the best way to grow. Just going deep in their market and trying to get better and offer a better experience in their one vertical.
Yep.
So,
yeah,
and
100%. It has to be like
go back to
really great. You have to be really great at one thing. That gives you permission to be
yes,
great at other stuff. But first, you have to be just
correct.
really great at one thing.
Correct. Obsess about your customer experience, which comes back to something that you said very early on in the show. When you started to get into this industry, you thought it was something that was very overlooked, and the home service industry as a whole is used to that. They've been a late adopter to most of the new technologies that have come out, and it's only been recently, especially with AI, that you're seeing it get adopted a lot quicker now within the home services space. But for you to come in and do that now is fantastic. I would love to see more tech come into the home services space, because it is a big industry. There's so much opportunity that's here, and they are underserved, not just in the quantity of the technology that's available, but in the quality, and being able to up level the entire industry with more and more offerings, with more and better.
Here's
I
to
agree.
that.
I agree. Yeah, cheers. Well, and just to that point, I think the technology that's coming in and adapting is a younger crowd coming up. Because they, well, look at, I mean, shit, look at CXT and what they have on the go, right? I mean, there's Amanda Trillo and Vanna Skiffington that were pioneering that, and a few others, don't get me wrong. But I mean, they're of a younger crowd, and they're starting to push that technology a little bit more, and that's where we're going to start to see some of the change.
And that's something that we observe quite a lot with our customers, because like, and you guys know this very, very well, but like, a lot of these businesses have been around for like 20, 30 years, right? Like the guy who started it, or the woman who started it, like is now like looking to think about what's next in their stage of life, and they might tap the kid on the shoulder, right? My very first employee at Coast, who's really my partner in building the business, he, after I think 2.5 years working with me, he left because his father was retiring from the HVAC business that he built over the course of like a number of decades. And this guy who had worked with me was like like a young, like super smart, talented guy, was tapped to take over the business. And like now, obviously, they're a Coast customer, right? It'd be nice to be employed, but he's a Coast customer, and like he's looking at the entire business and thinking like, okay, what are the things that we could be doing more efficiently? How can we grow this business, not just to grow a little bit, but grow a lot? How can we make this into sort of something that's like truly efficient, something that like we can truly operationalize into like the next order of magnitude of a scale of a business? I think that you see that dynamic across the board with quite a number of HVAC businesses, where there are the younger generation taking over, and they're looking at the way that things used to be done, and they're saying like, let's take a fresh eye to this. Like, let's think about how we could do this better. Let's think about how we could do it powered by technology.
Mhm. I agree to that 100%. So I'll be first to say thank you, for taking the time out of your day to chat with us, educate us on Coast Pay, some of the ways that people can take advantage of technology to be able to really streamline some of their operations, save money, save time, and just get a better buy-in to be able to have their techs be more efficient on the job. So thank you for sharing your knowledge and your wisdom on what you guys are doing to be able to disrupt the industry.
Guys, it was really, really fun to chat. I really appreciate you having me on. Thanks very much for the conversation. It was really fun.
Perfect. Thank you. And until next time.
Cheers.
Well, that's a wrap on another episode of HVAC Success Secrets Revealed. Before you go, two quick things. First off, join our Facebook group, facebook.com/groups/HVAC Revealed. The other thing, if you took one tiny bit of information out of this show, no matter how big, no matter how small, all we ask is for you to introduce this to one person in your contacts list. That's it. That's all. One person. So they too can unleash the ultimate HVAC business. Until next time, cheers.